Hello. Welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. My name's Lorene. I'm talking to you from the camp. We made it, and the weather is just perfect for me. Sun and cloud, around low 20s, and a bit of a breeze. And the tide is coming in from under the bridge. And the rock you see at the end of the dock will be, sort of where that dark line is. It will be underwater up to there. So I don't have my tripod, which is going to make filming just a little bit tricky. Because I have to hold it steady in my hands. Okay, so I hope I don't tell any hilarious jokes, otherwise it'll all get crazy. I have been reading pretty much nonstop. There have been a few other things that I've been able to do chore-wise and pleasure-wise, a bit of spinning, a bit of knitting, and a bit of drawing. So that's been really pleasant, really enjoying that kind of change in focus. And the first book I read, I didn't mention to you guys. It was The Red Chesterfield by Wayne Arthurson. Now, this is a mystery. A very short mystery. I think it's under 100 pages, and each chapter is not particularly long, and it's very peculiar. There are three brothers, and their names are J, like the letter J, K, like the letter K, and M, like the letter M. And our main protagonist is M. He is a bylaw officer. And his two other brothers, one's going to school and one is trying to run for election. And I wasn't really quite clear what kind of election he was running for, but or even if he was the one running and he had a candidate that he was supporting. I was a little unclear on that. Anyhow, M, in his role as a bylaw officer, has gone to a yard sale and is giving a warning because you can't run a commercial yard sale out of your property without a license. And so the gentleman that he encounters is a bit aggressive, and they have a bit of a verbal altercation. And as M is leaving, he finds a Red Chesterfield, and he wants to know, like, who's dumped this Red Chesterfield into the ditch, and goes back to the yard sale to see, is that yours? And more words. And he goes back to the Red Chesterfield and sees a running shoe and picks up the running shoe, and inside the running shoe is a severed foot. And now the thing starts rolling. And because it's so short, it's going to be really hard to not give you any spoilers. But M is implicated in the finding of this foot. The Chesterfield keeps appearing in different locations, and he really wants to give the owner of the Chesterfield a ticket. M ends up sort of over his head, and it's really quite an interesting way of telling a murder story. And does M solve the problem? Doesn't he? Is he a suspect? Isn't he? It's one of those sort of questions upon questions kind of mystery, and I super enjoyed it. The next book I read, Janet Ivanovich, Twisted 26, is I guess it's the 26th book in the Stephanie Plum series. I don't know when I started reading these, way back, it seems like. I don't know, she's been writing these for probably a decade, I'm pretty sure. And every once in a while someone asks about, what series do you like reading? And I completely forgot about this one because it's just hit or miss for me. I go into the library, I see something, and I think, oh, okay, I haven't read that one. And about 30% of the time, I get home and I think, damn, I did read this one. Anyhow, I hadn't read this one before, which is great. And Stephanie Plum and her Grandma Mauser are off on a whole bunch of crazy adventures. Grandma Mauser has married a hitman from the mob who's in his 80s, and they have gone to Las Vegas and were playing the slot machines, and he dropped dead of a heart attack. And the people who are surviving mob members believe that this gentleman had given Grandma Mazur the keys. Apparently, there are keys to some kind of nobody really knows. Well, okay, nobody who's not a mob member knows what those keys are for. So they want the keys back. Grandma says she doesn't have them. And Stephanie is charged with keeping her Grammy safe. And of course, it's the usual shenanigans and craziness that happens while Stephanie Plum is on the case. And she's a bounty hunter, so she's also tracking down, for part of her living, she's tracking down people who've skipped bail and taking them in. And there's the usual kind of shenanigans with apprehensions going badly. Lula, her sidekick, who's a huge ex-whore, wearing size 8 clothes. It's pretty funny. She's the sidekick of choice, I guess. Oops, went too fast there. And so there is solvings of these apprehensions, and there might be solving of Granny Mazur's problems. There's a couple of funerals, because that's Granny's favorite thing to do, go to funerals. And Steve cleaned out underneath the deck. Not the deck, I'm sorry. We've got a storage space there, so we're clearing out old stuff. I don't even recognize some of that stuff. Anyhow, yeah, so it ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, which I think is great fun, and I'm really up for the next one. I think it's going to or feature Stephanie and Grammy again as they try and figure out what to do next steps. But as with all mysteries, it's pretty hard not to give away my excitement about the book without giving away spoilers. I love this series. I think it's fabulous. It's completely up my alley as far as sense of humor and bit of slapstick and smart-ass remarks. And yeah, I think it's a great series. So that's the Stephanie Plum series, and the book was Twisted 26. Meet Me in Mumbai, a novel by Sabina Khan, is the next, well, for me, it's the next book for my young adults reading book club. I really ought to decide what the heck to call that. We used to belong to under the umbrella of Woozle's bookstore, but we're not doing that anymore. But we call ourselves the Woozle's Books Club, but we're not really, because no more patronage. Anyhow, the group of adult women who, for the most part, like to read young adult books. That's the book club. What a long name. In September, Meet Me in Mumbai is the book of choice. I'm on the hammock now, and I can't resist pushing it, so I'll try and stop the rocking. Last year, this thing had enough rotted strings that I fell twice, and Steve's convinced me that he's repaired it, but if there's like a sudden blackout, yeah, I fell. Meet Me in Mumbai was a bit of a disappointment. I was really looking forward to it. It wasn't a book that I would have selected on my own. Why not? I think mostly because I have found I'm finding that sort of new YA books that don't have a fantasy or a mystery or something along those lines tends to be one tone or one note, and so the plot line really has to grab me. We've got a young girl in 2000s who becomes pregnant. She's from India. She's come to finish the last year of high school so she can more easily be accepted into university in the US. And meets a young lad who's also from India, who's there for similar reason. And they fall in love, and there's a baby. Except he takes off before he realizes that there's a baby coming. And he just ghosts her. Although I think his mom might have had something to do with that. But anyhow, she's left on her own, and this is in 2000. So and this is all like the pre-abortion nightmare that's currently going on in Texas. And the story takes place in Indiana or Idaho, and then in Texas. So she has access to abortion, decides not to. There's a spoiler, sorry. But In the meantime, well, it's not really a spoiler because the other part of the book is about her daughter Mira, who she leaves a letter. Mom leaves a letter behind for Mira to come to Mumbai on her 18th birthday to meet by a fountain at 4 o'clock, and that's so. Yeah, it's not a spoiler that Mira is born. um, Okay, what ends up happening then is we start to get the story from Mira's point of view and her two moms. She's adopted by a female couple and has a younger sister eventually, and somehow comes across this letter just in the nick of time before she turns 18, so she's able to convince her moms to let her go to India. And because she's been raised by two white ladies, she's pretty unprepared for the culture and the language and all the rest of it of Mumbai. So the conflict in that family seems to be more around the travel arrangements. The mums are particularly understanding about Mira's urges to find her birth mother. They're like sort of shockingly agreeable to everything. Okay, I mean, the plot's okay, the characters are okay, the structure is okay, the pacing, a little bit one-sided. We get more of the mum side of the story, although the trauma that the mum is going through, the pregnant young 18-year-old mum, the trauma of having been ghosted and being in a country by herself and having to navigate a pregnancy through high school. I mean, wow, she really does that quite well. It's like that part of the story is super good. The coming to a solution as to what to do with this unwanted baby is very well done as well. Where things kind of slid for me, and I was suspicious about it as I was reading, the voices of the mom, whose name, Aisha, I believe it is. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Aisha. Yeah, Aisha. Aisha's tribulations are expressed in a certain voice, hers, of course, but she's even in her deepest sorrows and crying and stuff. There's not a lot of texture to her voice. There's not a lot of. We're told what's going on. She's always very logical in her sorrow and in her anger, and like she's always in full sentences. She's just like, I don't know. I didn't get the emotional impact for Aisha, which was tremendous. I mean, she was tremendously emotional. She's a very emotional young girl going through an awful lot. So then we get to Mira, and I was so worried when we would get to that voice, and my fears were confirmed. There's almost no change in the voice. In fact, I didn't hear it at all. I mean, there's changes in circumstances, there's changes in the parental support, like all of that. There's a different world that she's coming from, and she certainly doesn't have her mom's trauma. She's pretty trauma-free, actually. But her voice is pretty much the same, and I found that disappointing. I had more hopes for this book. And so would I recommend it? I would say, if you're in a bookstore and you have to get on a plane, buy this book. I'm not sure I would buy it. I would get it from the library. Helen Humphrey's The Ghost Orchard was one of the books that I said that I would be reading back in my little staircase discussion about what books to read. And this is a book that I thought would be just perfect for here. It's nonfiction, and it's about the development of the apple, the history of the apple in North America. And Helen Humphreys, I always love her writing. She's just such a poetic writer. Sorry, I shouldn't be swinging the hammock. Sorry, I hope nobody got seasick there. And she's a great researcher. She just does very thorough, really interesting kinds of research. I think because she's a poet, different kinds of facts will attract her attention. And so instead of like discovering, this isn't a true fact, let's pretend that General so-and-so had a commission for 63 apples of a certain variety. She would not necessarily like go at that as a statistical thing. She would come at it more from um, where the apples were coming from and where they were going, and if there was anything interesting that happened on the apple's journey or in the orchard that they landed in. And so it's a very, what should I say? It's almost fictional in a way, because she brings the characters of it into play so well. And we get the artists who did the illustration for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. We get a place called a ghost orchard, and there's also the orchards that First Nations people developed, which is new information to me. Oh, there's a mosquito on my ankle. Ugh. Ugh. Ants last time, mosquitoes this time. Okay, so it's this wonderful mix of fact and poetic fact. And I don't know if you've read other books by her, but she wrote The River, which is about the river that goes outside her cottage, that I think is in Kingston, Ontario area. Not positive. So anyway, she does this beautiful homage to the river outside her property there. And she's also written The Frozen Thames, which is also nonfiction. Oh my God, that... Oh. Frozen Thames, which I really like. That was about 500 years of history of the Thames and the mini ice ages, and how people in the, all those 500 years dealt with it. I have to go inside. Sorry about that. I didn't want to fight with the mosquitoes the way I had with the ants. There was one who was determined that they were going to bite my ankle. Okay, so the orchard. What were we talking about? I was talking about the Frozen Thames. Yeah, okay. So she goes through the life of the Thames and its freezing events, but through the actions of the people of London and how they responded to it. So she's got a really interesting lens on what she decides to research. And she has a very strong nonfiction stream of writing as well. And she's also a poet. So I think all those things come together, and she really knows how to tell a story. Now, I thought I hadn't read it. Then I started to read it and thought, sugar pie, I think I've read it. But I kept going because, nonfiction doesn't stick that well in my brain. So I kept on going, and then hit parts that I thought, yeah, for sure I haven't read this. So it was a really good read, and I completely recommend it. But then, I'm a Helen Humphreys fangirl. But I think it would make a great option for Nonfiction November. It was fast. I think I read it in about 3 hours, maybe, just one afternoon. So yeah, so far so good. The reading's going really well. We've had good weather, and my remaining books are rather short, so we're coming up to Steve's birthday book buying bash. So keep your fingers crossed for me that I find some really good doozies. Bye-bye for now. I hope all your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true.